Morning world, this is the Space Cowboy coming from the Interplanetary Good Vibe Zone, and we are back with the next game discussion talk. Like I said last week from the upload with Gundam Breaker 4, or it was either me talking about Gundam Breaker 4 or it was the Stranger Than Heaven video. It was one of those videos, but essentially I did say that I had completed Like a Dragon Ishin, or I was on my way to completing Like a Dragon Ishin, or Yakuza Ishin. I'll just keep saying that. But yeah, Yakuza Ishin is now done. I have finished playing the game, story, all that good stuff. Spent a good fair amount of time with the game, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to talk about it, give our thoughts, all that good stuff. So of course, if you enjoy these types of videos, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep doing some stuff. We're going to go back and revisit some other older videos that I actually done in the past with like some games that I want to like try to redo to give you guys not only a better video but just better perspective on those games a little bit more. But yeah, man, Yakuza Ishin. So of course, if you are familiar already, we are not unfamiliar with talking about the RGG/Yakuza games here on the channel. We've done a few videos so far just like talking about Yakuza because I do like this series a lot. It is one of my favorite game series out there, even with a lot of the stuff that's come out as of late and in the past couple of years. I still really do like these games. And I finally got around to picking up Ishin because I could not buy it when it came out 2 years ago. It came out on 2023. And mind you, this is the remake, by the way. So this is a remake of the Yakuza Ishin game that came out 10 years ago. This game came out February 22nd, 2014. So it's pretty much been like 11 years since the original game. And we got a remake of the game. And this game's fun. So look, as far as the story goes, the story is about Sakamoto Ryoma, samurai in the Bakamatsu period. This game pretty much takes a real-life historical period in Japan, or from Japan, and we get a story with just Yakuza flavoring / like a Dragon, Yakuza characters. So I can't really comment all that well on the story, mostly because I'm not really intelligent enough to really get into the actual historical periods of the Bakamatsu era. But still, for what the story does give you and kind of getting to see these characters from a different perspective, it is pretty good. It's nice to see, despite that some of these characters are kind of assigned to roles that you could see them / expect them being in. It's very similar to the thing that I've said in my Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise discussion a while back, where I talked about how some of the voice actors of the Yakuza characters voiced certain Fist of the North Star characters. You can kind of tell like who plays who. It's pretty similar here, like especially when you're playing the game and you actually get to see how these characters act and pretty much like the counterparts to who they are in Yakuza. And again, it's another reason why I can't really say that I'm well equipped to explain these actual historical characters in a way. For the most part, again, like this game is still going to be pretty exaggerated because I'm pretty sure like this game is not depicting the 100% accurate events of like actual historical, points in history. But you are getting a good idea of like this point in time in, Japan's history. And it's still cool to see like, essentially not Kiryu and not Majima and like all these other guys. Like they don't act fully 100% like their typical selves. You do get to see these guys in a different light. Plus, it's just really cool to see a lot of the characters that you never would have seen interact before in any of the Yakuza games, like Ryuji and Akiyama, and also getting to see Mine interact with like Majima and Saejima and like a lot of other characters. Like it's really cool to see a sort of mixing of different eras in Yakuza kind of coming together in this one game. And the story's not that long. I think like there are about, I believe, 14 chapters, but these chapters go by pretty damn quickly. So yeah, you really wouldn't have any issues getting through the story. The gameplay is really where most of this conversation is going to get to. But as far as like the actual story itself, the story's good. Like it's not bad. It's not like, crazy fantastic, but I mean, it's a really solid story. Again, just getting to see these characters from a different perspective. And I think they did do a good job on that. Now, the gameplay and just the history of the game. So, okay, here's the thing. If you are a fan of RGG, if you're a fan of Yakuza, somebody like me who's known about this series before it popped off, 9 times out of 10, you are already aware of the original game that came out and that game was only available in Japan. It never got a international release. And for the longest time, a lot of fans were crying and asking for Ishin. Like, is Ishin gonna get a port? Are we gonna get a remake? Are we gonna like a Kiwami kind of thing? When are we ever gonna get Ishin? And Ishin, you know, pretty much got hyped up for like a long time. Like, granted, I do think that hype is warranted in some way, because playing this game on paper should have the best combat out of all the beat 'em up Yakuza games. And what do I mean by that? Well, the unique thing about this game's combat is that, unlike pretty much all the other mainline Yakuza games, where you're pretty much fighting with your fist, you know, good old fisticuffs, and you do have other things that can extend into like combos and like the core gameplay aspects and all that stuff, like the weapons. You know, being able to use all these different types of weapons, and those weapons having like their own heat actions, and even some of them having their own unique attacks, all that cool stuff, which I always love that. But the weapons are always secondary to the actual main, you know, fighting in of itself. But with Ishin, this game is designed around that, where it's like, hey, I'm actually fighting with a sword. I'm actually fighting with a gun. There's a style that, you know, combines the gun and the sword, you know, with, you know, swordsman, gunman, wild dancer. Of course, we still do have like the regular fist style of like brawler and all that stuff. But, you know, for somebody like me, who's played these games for a very long time, has played just about all these damn games for the most part, getting to play a game like this, I want to use the sword style. I want to use the gun style. I want to use wild dancer. Like, I had a lot of fun messing around with these styles, even though they do have their own issues in a sense. But like, it's nothing like too annoying. But some of these styles do feel a little clunky, a little stale. Mainly swordsman being like one of the main styles you're going to use a lot. There's definitely some issues with like hit detection here and there, or maybe like a certain attack not hitting. Also, that kind of like famous Yakuza, or maybe infamous, depending on how you look at it, but, you know, pretty famous thing of not being able to hit certain heat actions if you're not, you know, doing like a certain thing, or maybe the game might not detect the heat move depending on what position you're in, and all that kind of stuff. I will say, playing through this game, while I did have a lot of fun, I also, on the opposite end, kind of got really annoyed pretty fast, just because of how this game's upgrading and everything works. So from what I understand, and mind you, I probably should have said this in the beginning as well, I never got my chance to play the original Ishin. I never did like the emulator or anything like that, because I do know there's an English translation for the original Ishin that was being worked on, or that is still being worked on. So from what I understand, some of the issues that are in this game, as far as upgrading and all that stuff goes, and of course even like the completion, also carried over from the, or pretty much it carried over from the original to the remake. They didn't change anything. So upgrading your swords, or just upgrading your weapons in general, because again, that's like the big part about this game. Because you are a samurai in this, you know, feudal era of Japan, the weapon grinding / material grinding in this game is pretty damn egregious. Like, it takes a lot for you to like get all these materials and even farm up certain weapon drops, because drops can vary between the dungeons, which, you know, we'll get into in a little bit. But man, like, it's a lot, especially because, again, I don't know exactly how much was in the original versus how much is in the remake now, but there is a blacksmith shop that you have to go to in order for you to craft / upgrade your swords, your guns, and even like special weapons. You have like odachis and battle axes and all that kind of stuff, which is pretty cool. But again, the amount of materials you need is audacious. Not only that, the amount of money that you need to craft the weapons, it's so much, it really doesn't seem like it's worth it to craft most of these weapons unless you are literally going out of your way to play this game for like a good minute and you're really trying to like dig deep into the mechanics and all that stuff. It's a lot, and it's really not just that alone. So of course, not the weapons, the upgrade wheels have also returned. So of course, if you were familiar with Kiwami and in Lost Paradise, I actually believe it was this game, the original Ishin, that introduced like the upgrade wheels that we got for like the 4 games that we had it. I personally don't mind the upgrade wheels system. I know some people out there who are Yakuza fans don't particularly like it. I don't don't think it's that bad. I do think that the upgrades this time around are a bit more minimal and a little annoying to get around, just because, you know, obviously with stuff like the health upgrades and the power upgrades and all that stuff, you know, people say, oh, it really doesn't feel like you're getting that much of an increase. In this game in particular, I really feel like the health upgrades that you get normally do nothing. Like, you barely see that bar move. Like in other games, I don't know, listen, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm the crazy one. I always felt like even if it's slow, I still feel like, oh yeah, I'm increasing my health bar. But in this game, it barely looks like it moves. Even once you get around a good few levels in the game with each of the styles, when you're getting your health upgrades, it's like a little pea shooter. Like, it just doesn't move. And that goes into my next sort of issue with the combat system, slash new addition, which I'm definitely sure for a fact this is a new addition to this game. We have a trooper card system, which pretty much gives you a bunch of extra abilities, whether it's passive boost for like extra attack damage, extra defense, even like healing, you know, a bunch of like new unique heat moves and all that kind of stuff. I don't think the trooper card system is bad on paper, but here's the big thing about this trooper card system. You use these trooper cards to not only get access to a lot of these abilities that you are definitely going to need for these enemies in this game, you're also going to need them because they do give you health. So you can equip up to 3 or 4 trooper cards depending on how you have your setups, because of course you have different types of builds for different types of cards and all that stuff. And you have your 4 main squad slots that you can use in battle, but then you of course have reserve slots that you can just put in to also level up as you're playing along, even if you're not using those cards specifically. And these trooper cards have their own individual stats. Mainly, they have health, and you want to level these up to increase your health bar. So if you don't want to interact with the trooper card system, technically you could, but I really feel like in this game specifically, you're kind of screwing yourself over if you don't, because you are not going to have any health whatsoever if you don't use these trooper cards. Like I said, your health from the upgrades already feel so small and insignificant that it doesn't really do anything. It really feels like this game wants you to rely heavily on these trooper cards, which again, you're already going to be doing, because some of these enemies in this game can be pretty annoying. Like, yeah, now Yakuza, you know, has been pretty infamous for the way they kind of fight and how you encounter them in these games. But dude, let me tell you something. I'm not gonna lie to you. Some of these enemies are pretty damn whack. Like, I think the giant enemies and the ninjas specifically are like some of the most annoying times I've had playing this game, because the giant enemies can't get staggered. So when you're fighting them, you're going to be using a lot of hit and run tactics to try to get your damage in. You can either use Wild Dancer or Gunman. That's usually worked for me. However, that's still a bit risky because you are at risk of taking a lot of damage, because these things will hit you and they can do about a good 25 to even 30% of your health bar in damage if you get hit a couple of times. And that's caused to be a nice amount of runs on some of these dungeon battles, or even some of the story missions if I ever did fight any of the giant enemies. And the ninja enemies, like, even if you hit them a couple of times, like say if you have them in a string and you do a couple of hits, they have like this invincible like dodge that just they just activate even in the middle of a combo. When you're hitting them, it's like it just gets negated. And you know, like they do a lot of darting around. They're pretty quick on their feet, which, I mean, again, it's fair because they're like ninja archetypes. But I feel like the enemy design in this game is not as tight as it could have been. And that's also not to mention just how wonky the hit boxes and hurt boxes are for like for the enemies that you're fighting. Because I did mention, you know, fighting the giant enemies, that you have to be careful with using certain styles because they can still hit you for a lot of damage. And a lot of that came from how like weird interacting with the hurt boxes are with the enemies, not just the giant enemies, but even with the ninja enemies. Because like I said, they have that invincible dodge that they can just do even if you're hitting them in the middle of a combo. Like, it completely negates anything that you do, and they will just straight up ignore any of your hits that you're trying to swing at them. It's like your sword just kind of goes right through them. And with the giant enemies, you know, a lot of the times when I'm using Wild Dancer and I'm like dodging their hits in the middle of the combo, and mind you, I have all the upgrades. I have pretty much most of the upgrades. So I have the canceling of combos in between, or I can cancel out of my combo strings when I'm doing it in the middle of the thing. And I am going around them, I'm trying to go to the side, and there are still some instances where they are going to hit me even if I do feel like I dodge them. Also, they can still hit you while you're grounded. So if they knock you down, if they stagger you, you can't do anything to get out of it, but you can still get hit. And you're going to lose like 40 or even 50% of your health. I don't think that's very good. And again, it mixing with just how kind of wishy-washy the combat is already, with, you know, also bringing in the trooper cards, incorporating how like weapon upgrading and like how egregious it is. Like, it's a lot. And I understand if someone gets scared out of playing this game when you're explaining all of these things to them, because it's not just the fact of, oh, you have to upgrade your character already with the 4 main styles that you're going to be playing with. That's not even counting the specific skills that you have to learn from all of the mentors. And the weird part about that too is that when you learn specific abilities, you know, specific locked abilities on your wheels, you don't unlock those abilities automatically. You still like, so let me put it this way. Say, you know, because Komaki is in the game. So I go train with Komaki. I want to get the Komaki knockback or the Komaki tiger drop. I go ahead, I get to a certain point in the game. I learn those specific abilities. Those abilities do not unlock automatically on their own. Pretty much the slot unlocks, but you still have to go out of your way to unlock those nodes in order of the abilities that you're unlocking them. And that goes for all of the other teachers as well, for all 4 of your teachers that you learn all of your unique skills from. The abilities do not unlock automatically, which in that case, why not just let me unlock those abilities as soon as I learned them from the mentors? Like, I feel like that's kind of a waste of time for me to put in, like, you know, all this extra work to get all these extra cool abilities that I'm definitely going to need to help me in these battles, and I have to sit here and wait till I unlock enough nodes in order or in sequence in order for me to get those abilities. I just think that's kind of counterintuitive between all of these different things. It just makes for a pretty poor gameplay experience. Even for me, I already feel like this is a bit much, which I think is pretty unfortunate, because despite some of these critiques that I do have, I still like engaging with the game. I still really love the combat. Like, again, just being able to play as a Ronin samurai in this era of Japan and actually getting to mess with literal weapon styles built around weapons in this game. I just think it's really fun and creative, but there are some pretty glaring issues that they could have improved with this game being a remake. And between the weapon crafting just not being great, what you have to do to like really craft good weapons to really feel like you're actually doing stuff in the game, because I didn't even mention the menial damage numbers that pop up. Like, just seeing those low numbers pop up, which you can turn off, by the way. I forgot that I had that option. When you think you have a good weapon and you still feel like you're not making too much headway, like it feels like it takes a little bit to get into the game to really feel like you're starting to damage these enemies, or really feel like you're having an impact in all the time you spent upgrading yourself. But like, it's a lot between the weapon upgrading all 4 styles, getting just the trooper cards alone, and like making sure you have good abilities, which even in that case, you're not going to have good trooper cards until you get way later into the game. Now, to be fair, I will say that the game does at least give you pretty decent weapon drops as you're playing along in the story. You'll get a couple of swords, a gun here and there, maybe even a special weapon. The game does at least reward you so that you don't have to deal with the tedium as much. And it really came to me at this point where I'm like, did this game really need to be a remake? Because I partially feel like a big reason for why a lot of the stuff with the core gameplay is an issue and it's the way that it is because of the fact that it's a remake. Where I feel like if this game was just a remaster, it wouldn't have been that bad, you know. Again, I know the original game had a fair amount of its own issues, but looking back on this now and just like how they made a lot of really cool changes with like the combat and even like the new mini games and, you know, a lot of the new stuff, which I mean, okay, you know, I guess I could just mention that real quick. Mini games are mini games. I mean, come on, if you played Yakuza, if you played any of the Yakuza games, you should be familiar with how most of these mini games are in this game. So yeah, but I feel like this game maybe really didn't need to be a remake, especially when you look at it where it's like, you know, we had Yakuza 3 that came out in 2009, Yakuza 4 came out in 2010, and then Yakuza 5 came out 2 years before this game in 2012. And yet those 3 games just got packaged together as a remaster collection. And it's funny to me because this game, it is 10 years old, but it's not like as old as some of the other stuff, you know, some of the other games I marked off. And, you know, even with the other Yakuza spin-off game with Kenzan, that came out in 2008. So I'm looking like, I feel like if we got a remake of Kenzan, that could be more justified because that was like the first Yakuza game that was on PS3. And this game was like pretty far in the PS4 era. I feel like this game would have been pretty fine with a remaster instead of a full-blown remake, because now I feel like there are certain changes and additions that really didn't need to be there. So I don't know, take that what you will. I personally think that some of this stuff really could have got cut out. Because like I said, as far as the actual story and all that stuff goes, and just me, you know, going through all that, I had a lot of fun with this game. I still do mostly enjoy playing the game. I still did have fun. But again, like, I'm just in my head, like, it's weird because on one end, I'm like, I really should feel like I love the combat in this game. But then on the other end, I'm like, there's just, it's too much tedium. Just from the core gameplay aspect alone, you definitely should not worry about 100% completion for the combat. If you're just going to play through this game once, which I definitely think you should, mind you, like, this is not me saying don't play this game. I definitely think that this game should still be played at least once if you want to, you know, try out these games, especially, you know, since it's a spin-off game. You know, you can go ahead and dip your toe, you know, into these games if you don't want to hop into the mainline stuff immediately. Or if they were still going to go with the remake aspect, maybe they could have just taken out a couple of things like the trooper cards. I would have changed how the trooper cards work and maybe just let them be like an addition and not necessarily a crux that you have to rely on. And because it just kind of dilutes the experience more on top of like the, you know, 3-4 other things you have to do. And so, you know, just to kind of leave it on one more thing, because I didn't get the chance to mention the battle dungeons. It can get pretty annoying after a while because you're not guaranteed certain drops, and you're really only gonna get the really good drops you need closer to the end, which, I mean, that's to be expected. But then again, like, the problem lies in the fact of a lot of these different aspects of the game piling on top of each other, and then like dealing with the enemy design in the game. And the dungeons, while they are fun, you know, after a while it does kind of get a little stale. At least to me it does. And this is coming from a guy that plays Muso games, you know. So in this situation, you know, it's me like constantly grinding for materials, constantly grinding for certain weapon drops. You could say I'm bad at the game, and it's like, I know I'm not, I mean, you know, which fine, but I don't know. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I still think this game should be played, especially if you want to experience the game's story at least once. I still think the game's combat is fun. I really do. I genuinely still do enjoy the core gameplay for Ishin to a degree. It's just, again, it's just a lot of hoops that you gotta jump through that I think are pretty unnecessary. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. You know, if you played this game, let me know what you feel. You know, if you agree, if you disagree, I'd love to hear your opinions. As long as you're not being toxic about it. Like I said, we're always here to have fun discussion and, you know, intellectual discussion, I guess, all the good stuff. Yeah. So make sure you subscribe. The big goal of the channel right now is to hit 500 subscribers. I would like to hit that by the end of the year, especially because I am planning a pretty big video that I'm actually going to be dumping my own money into, money coming out of my own pocket for. I'm not going to say exactly what it is just yet, but like I said, I am planning a pretty big project And you know, I'm actually going to start reaching out to some people that I can like work on this with, and you know, I'm getting like an actual script and all that stuff together. Like I'm really trying to like nail this down. I really would like for this to be like a pretty cool like 500 sub special, or who knows, even if I don't get the 500 subs by the end of the year, if I still manage to, you know, get the video done, maybe this is the video that can like really pop me off. I don't know. So please, if you like what I do, give me a shot. I think you'll enjoy it here. Make sure you hit the notification bell so that you never miss any updates for videos and live streams coming up on the channel. Make sure you are interacting with me more on the community/post section of the channel. I have the full feature unlocked on mobile apps, so for any of you that's subscribed, please feel free to like post anything that you think is cool or that's relevant to the channel and all that good stuff. And of course, I'm also posting shorts just in case I'm not able to get too many videos out during the week. You can still get those. And yeah, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is the Space Cowboy, and I hope you guys have a good night.